Boris Johnson says there will be some opening up of international travel from May the 17th when a handful of countries are expected to be added to the UK's green list.
The Prime Minister warned, though, we have to remain cautious to avoid an influx of disease. So what does this mean for potential summer holidays? The Secretary of State for International Trade, Liz Truss, joins us now. Very good morning to you. Do we know when and where will be opened up today?
We are not announcing that yet. There will be an announcement coming soon in terms of where and what the procedures will be. And I encourage people to wait for that announcement, but they're not going to have to wait too much longer.
So when you say too much longer, is it going to be this? Is it going to be this week?
I've just said it will be shortly that we're making that announcement, and I encourage people to wait to get the details. But as mentioned, you know, we do want to open up travel over time, but we need to make sure it's safe, and we need to make sure we're not re-importing the virus. So that is the important work that is going on in government, to make sure when we do make that announcement, it's fully prepared.
Will it require people to have both vaccinations if they're allowed to go on holiday legally?
So all of those details will be in the announcement that is coming shortly. I'm not able to give you any more details at this stage. I would strongly encourage people to wait for that announcement when those details will be made clear.
One of the things that people will be anxious about, I'd say there's two things, actually. There'll be a lot of people who desperately need a break and want to be able to travel abroad. But equally, there will be huge numbers of people who are very worried about the state of infections still, particularly in our most popular foreign destinations, for instance, Spain, Italy, France. So there's a balance, isn't there, that the government has to strike. We know how important tourism from those countries to the UK is. We know how important those governments feel that our tourism is. But we don't want to be bringing infection back here to the UK when we've done so well with the vaccination programme.
Well, it's been an incredibly frustrating year for everybody with the restrictions we've had to put in place. And you're right, we've made huge progress. We've done 50 million vaccinations now. We're really bringing down the levels of COVID, and we don't want to see that progress reversed. So any decisions that are made on travel, we'll take that into account. We'll be making sure it is safe. We're not re-importing the virus. There are proper testing procedures. And that's why it does take time to make sure we get those details right. So there is, of course, a balance to be struck. Of course, you know, I'm the Trade Secretary. I want to see people travelling for business, bringing more jobs to across the United Kingdom. People need to be reunited with their families. And of course, over time, we want to see tourism and we want to give British people opportunities to travel. But we do have to make sure it is safe, and we're not in a position of re-importing the virus and setting ourselves back. So we need to do it in a way that is making progress and is not reversible.
What do you think, Liz? What do you think? Do you agree with the cross-party group of MPs who are calling for no leisure travel for after May the 17th? What do you think? And you've got relationships with all these international countries on a trade level, so you'll be wanting to protect their citizens. You don't want them blaming you. They'll be picking the phone up to you if suddenly their rates go up, or there's issues in their countries, or if they're being blamed for rates going up here in the UK. You need to maintain your relationship. So what do you think, as our International Trade Secretary, should we be travelling internationally come May the 17th?
Well, the answer is we should, provided it's safe and provided we're not in a position of re-importing the virus. So this is all about making sure we have the right measures in place, the testing regime, the quarantine regime. And you're right, I am talking to my international counterparts. Everybody wants to see the global economy recover. We want to see business travel resumed, but there are some very, very severe issues. At the moment, we are currently shipping oxygen supplies and equipment to India because of the severe situation they face there. So we need to work to deal with the health crisis to make sure that countries get the vaccinations they need, that they get the equipment and supplies they need, and over time, when it is safe, reintroduce travel.
This month, there was a report that travellers arriving at Heathrow were having to queue for up to 6 hours to pass through immigration controls. We couldn't possibly have a situation, could we, from May the 17th, where you allow millions of us to go travelling, but we haven't fixed the problems at our airports, because apart from anything else, that feels like it would be a petri dish. I mean, you've had enormous success with the vaccinations, of course, for adults, but children won't have been vaccinated. I mean, there might be an exemption or a testing regime for them when it comes to holidays. But how are you going to fix those problems in the arrivals halls?
Well, the important point is we do need to go through these new procedures of making sure people have had COVID tests, making sure they've filled in their locator forms. Those procedures need to happen, and that is the priority, because without those, we're not protected against re-importing the virus. And the work that the Global Travel Task Force is doing is precisely making sure airports can handle the volumes, they can handle the procedures that are needed in a safe way. You know, there's proper social distancing, there's proper arrangements at the airport, which is why it's important that we wait for the announcement to make sure all of those procedures are in place. Because, of course, people are frustrated about, you know, being confined for a year. You know, of course, we've had to have lots of restrictions, but the reason that it is taking time is we needed to get the virus down in the UK. We needed to get our vaccination programme rolled out. Yes. And of course, we need the procedures that are going to be safe at the airport and make sure that the airport can cope. The airports can cope with the volume.
Sure that the airports can cope, because if the Chief Solutions Officer Chris Garton told MPs the situation is becoming untenable. That's this month. Said the police have been forced to step in on some occasions. Well, if you're going to open the whole situation up, you've got to fix the problem, haven't you, before you allow more and more people to gather with more and more checks.
I completely agree. We need to make sure that the airports and other authorities have the proper procedures in place, that they can manage the load of travellers, that they can manage the number of destinations. Of course, that needs to be clear. I mean, and on one side, you've got people saying that we shouldn't open up at all. On the other side, you've got people saying we should open up straight away. The answer is we need to open up in line with the data, in a safe way, with the proper procedures in place.
Provided them with additional officers. That's something the Home Secretary needs to address urgently, isn't it?
Well, this is all being looked at as part of the Global Travel Task Force. This will be covered in the announcement that we're going to be making shortly, to make sure that travellers have the safety and security that these issues have been dealt with.
Now, Liz Truss, I've heard you mention and lots, the word coming out from the Conservative government is quite rightly the success has been the vaccine rollout. Is it slightly disappointing, though, as we head towards an election, and that could be your election-winning message, the vaccine rollout? Is it slightly disappointing and frustrating that the headlines are all about Prime Minister Boris Johnson, of his own making, of allegations of sleaze, some are calling it even corruption, questions unanswered? There's now 3 different inquiries, just when the Conservative government, after this terrible year of the pandemic, were coming out of it with everything shining and the vaccine rollout success. And now, the very man at the top, it puts all that at risk, doesn't he?
Well, I've been out campaigning in the local elections, and the feedback I get from people is the issues that concern them are making sure the vaccine rollout is taking place. People are delighted by the progress, the fact that we've got to 50 million vaccines. People want to know about the future of the economy. Today I'm making an announcement there'll be 6,000 new jobs thanks to the trade arrangements that we're signing with India. And they want to know about the future of their town or their city, which is what these elections are about. And of course, you know, we can't control what the media report on and cover, but it is very, very different to what people are saying to us on the ground, which is their concerns are about making sure we deal with this COVID crisis.
As a minister, surely to protect the future of government and politics and democracy in this country, there is a Prime Minister with allegations that he's broke the ministerial code. OK, some of the pollsters, some of the people out there may not quite get the intricacies of that, but you surely know how important that is. We have got to make sure, we've got to find out that our Prime Minister hasn't broken the code, and if he has broken the code, then he must suffer the consequences. That is the issue at hand, isn't it?
The Prime Minister is very clear that he has met the costs of the Downing Street refurbishment, and certainly members of the public I speak to, they are, reassured by that. That is absolutely clear, and the situation has been laid out clearly.
Truss.
I'm not going to answer any hypothetical questions. What people
he hasn't declared them. It's not hypothetical to suggest he hasn't declared the money and there's no record of it. That's a fact. It hasn't been declared, and it hasn't done. And the ministerial the interest register, a register of interest, has not been made available for over a year now, and he should have put that in back in July. He hasn't. So that is not hypothetical. That is a pure fact. Surely you agree that if he did pay for it himself, he should just make that very clear and declare it to all of us now, and that's the end of it.
Well, he has made it very clear that he's met the costs of refurbishment, and that is what people want to know. They want to know that he's met the cost of refurbishment. He's made that clear.
Should he resign if these inquiries, if they make it clear that he broke the ministerial conduct? Remember what that is. Those are based on the principles of integrity, honesty, decency. He's the Prime Minister. If the inquiry says that he broke the ministerial code, should the Prime Minister of this country resign?
He's made it very clear that he has covered the costs of these refurbishments. I'm not going to answer.
That's not the question I asked.
I'm not going to prejudge.
That's not the question I asked. If you're going to come on, at least answer the question that I asked. I think it's a very fair question. We're not talking about the detail. We're talking about the honour of our government and our politics in our country, and the Prime Minister's at the very top. It's very simple. If he broke the ministerial code, the thing that he is held accountable for, it is the very thing he's held accountable for. If he breaks that code, should our Prime Minister resign, yes or no?
There are a number of investigations going on at the moment. I think it would be completely wrong for me to try and prejudge the results of those investigations and give you hypothetical answers. What we know is that the Prime Minister covered the costs of the refurbishment. That's the important fact. And as I've said, every conversation I've had with voters in the run-up to the local elections has been about the vaccine rollout, the future prospects of their town or city, opportunities. That's what people care about.
OK. Liz Truss, thank you very much for joining us this morning on Good Morning Britain.